I told her that even the worst criminal get time off for good behavior, but she's not buying into it. And then I have 10 children, 10 grandkids and 4 children. One of my children is here. 3 of them work full time for us. And Eric, my eldest, is here. And two of his 4 children are here. His children, my grandkids, are the most expensive because my wife says my house is the yes house and his house is the no house. So they always call me. Anyway, but so he's a wonderful prophet too. I want to encourage you. You'll see a slide in a little bit about us going to Israel. I go on tours to Israel, and I feel very passionate about it because it changes people's lives. If you are born again and have any relationship with the Lord Jesus, we make it alive to you by taking you to Israel and letting you live the life, those 10 days with us. We track the life of Jesus completely, exactly where he was and everything that you can imagine. It is a tremendous experience. It's in December, the 9th to the 19th. Consider coming to that. All right, please turn in your Bibles to the book of Acts. A lot of people are into the Old Testament numbers. They want to see how many people are in the church. God's more into the Acts, what they do, getting things done, Acts. Luke wrote the book of Acts. He wrote the book of Luke. If you do Bible trivia, he's responsible for more words than anybody else of writing. And he's the only non-born Jew that wrote in the Bible. He became a Jew, and he's a Greek boy. Luke was a Greek. He was, and I found out people just don't know much about him, but he was born and raised in Antioch. Antioch was a very vibrant, growing industrial area, and not industrial, but business area, and the Jews and the Christians flocked there. And of course, his parents brought him there, and he got converted to Judaism. He became a Jew from being a Greek boy in mythology. And then he heard the Christian message, got saved, and became a medical doctor, all of that. And he took it upon himself to write the book of Luke, reconstructing it from different people. And he wrote the book of Acts. The first 12 chapters of the book of Acts is all about Peter. The rest is all about Paul and his journey. Saul, what an interesting man that was. He was born and raised in a town called Tarsus, not in Israel, more northwest of Israel. It was a town that was run by the Romans, and what that would mean is they were very democratic and had total freedom. And of course, this Jew grew up with his Pharisee parents, who were very spiritual and religious, and he was dedicated to God. And he brags in one of his epistles, Paul does, that he knew more about Judaism or the Jewish law than any of the Jews of his age. Interesting man, Saul. He was so dedicated that he, like any other Jew, would go to the festival or festivals in Jerusalem. We're required to attend 3 of them a year. If you're really a good Jew, there's 7 festivals. 3 of them are around Passover. So Passover was the most sought after, most visited of all the feasts that we do. And in the times of his visiting feast in Jerusalem, he became an underwriter or became a follower or a student, disciple of a man called Gamaliel. Gamaliel was, you'll find in the book of Acts, a few different places, starting in the Acts 5 about him. He's a very wise man, and he studied under Gamaliel. He actually boasts and brags and gets credit to fame, Saul was. Never got married. No recollection of him in relationship of any kind. When he was so young, he was very determined. You know, Jesus died in 27 AD, and Paul would have been in the 20s ADs about in that area too. So he must have been hearing about him a whole lot when he was young. But he purposed in his heart to stamp out this sect they call the Nazarene sect, this strange religion. So he worked very hard to get rid of these Christians, and he did everything correct. He went to the top dogs and the actual bishops and leaders of the Israeli nation, got them to sign off so he could actually persecute soldiers, and they would kill and eliminate people that were misleading. Stephen is one of them that you read about, that he held the garments while they stoned Stephen. And he was on his way to Damascus with some soldiers when he met Christ on the road to Damascus, has a serious conversion there. And from there on, he goes exactly the opposite direction. He finds that Christ is real. And that's how zealous he was. He never got married. He was 14 years long in Antioch. He went back to Jerusalem after being in Damascus, but they wanted to kill him, so the Christians got rid of him quickly back to Tarsus for safety. And then Barnabas, also a good guy. That was a good guy, Barnabas. Very loved and very respected. Him and his sister and his nephew, Mark, who wrote the book of Mark. Of course, you know all this stuff. I'm just telling you, refreshing you, because you know all this, you good Bible students, you. I've never heard this stuff. It's all available. It's in the Bible. You can read it, and there's lots of media. They asked me, where do you study your material from? Well, I used to have massives of library books, and I still have them. They're just electronic now, but I used to study, and take days to study some things. Now you can go just on Google and ChatGPT, and you have it within 10 seconds. You have all the answers, and they're accurate. I'm not kidding you. We have all the facilities to us. Don't waste them, use them. If you go and chat to GPT and ask him, what do you know about Saul of Tarsus? How old was he? When would he die? What did he die of? Ask him, he'll tell you all that stuff. Interesting. If you know the people that write the books, you get more engrossed in them. Paul was your brother. He was 14 years long in Antioch. Him and Barnabas began to teach there because they were growing so fast. They had revival. After about 7 years, him and Barnabas go down to Jerusalem because now they're not sure what all these Gentiles. They're not Jews, they're Gentiles getting saved. What are we going to do with them? Circumcise, make them Jewish, what do we do? And that's when they decided to do what they did. And so he was there 14 years. And after 14 years fasting and praying, the prophets there decided, by the word of the Lord, to send Barnabas and Paul all around on a missionary trip. And he went on 3 missionary trips. Paul did. After his 3rd trip, he ended up in Jerusalem, and they tried so to stop him. The brethren said, please don't go. They want to kill you in Jerusalem. And so one of the guys said, well, why don't you go and show that you're not against the Jewish faith? Why don't you shave your head, take vows and go sit in the temple and do the 7-day fast, which he did. And then they found him in the temple, and there was such a commotion, so the Romans arrested him, and took 2 years before he appealed to Caesar, and he's off to Caesar. And they set him sail with all these other criminals, and it's on his way to Rome. This is now Paul. And we pick up that story because now we're leaving with a ship, and they sail because it's a cargo ship. They got these criminals aboard. They're sailing from port to port to port. It's not one of those fast ones. It's got the sails waiting for wind to blow. And in one incident in chapter 27, Paul says, let's not sail because I can see. Now, he's not a sailor. Paul is not any kind of maritime man at all. He's actually a tent maker. And he says, I can see if we sail, we're going to lose our lives and the cargo and the ship. Let's not do it. And they don't listen to him. He's just a criminal, looks in chains. Let's just go. And they go, and they make a big mistake because sure enough, they get into a nasty 14-day-long storm. Never saw the stars, never saw the sun, it was really a bad. It was so bad that they passed ropes under the ship to tie the ship together. Now, if I was on a cruise and they were tying my ship together, I want my money back now. I would not like that at all. They began to toss the cargo overboard, knowing full well they're not going to get paid for the cargo. And they're tossing it overboard. I mean, it's exactly what he said. We're losing cargo, the ship, and our lives. Bad situation. And so Luke writes in chapter 27, he says, and we finally gave up all hope of being saved. And then Paul gets up and he says, excuse me. An angel came to me last night. What? And he said, Paul, you have to go to Caesar. And God has graciously granted. In other words, you petitioned, you prayed, God says, okay, I'm going to give you all the lives sailing with you. So Paul says, now eat, brethren, don't be tense anymore. We're all going to be saved. We must run aground on some sandbar. And I believe it'll be exactly as God said. Sure enough, they run aground on some sandbar, and they arrive on a little island called Malta. Welcomed us, all because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and he put it on the fire, a viper driven out by the heat, fastened itself onto his hand. Didn't just brush by, it actually got locked onto his hand. When the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, "This man must be a murderer." Kind of strange to me that someone doesn't even know you, but they can quickly assess or judge you. It's amazing how we judge people so easily. And let me tell you, it's not a wise thing to judge anybody, because that judgment comes back on you. When you've been going through a lot of crises, not understanding why, it's possibly because you've been judging people and you're just getting back what you've been dishing out. You need to repent of all judgment. Don't have an opinion about someone else's life, because you don't know. But whatever bad stuff they're doing, you don't know. You don't know the whole story. Got quiet in this place. Do you ever say amen here or anything? Nothing? No? Must be like an Episcopal church or something. All right. So they said this man must be a murderer, for though he escaped the sea, justice has not allowed him to live. But Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. The people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead. But after nothing happened, and waiting a long time, nothing unusual happened, they changed their minds and said he was a god. So in in the morning, he was a devil, he was a murderer, and in the evening, he was a god. How fickle and how shallow people are. You do not rise and fall on people's opinions. Many of you in the room are sitting here today, emotionally distraught and suffering, all because of people's opinions. I want to, as a father and an older person, I want to help you as I speak to my own children. Loose yourself from people's opinions, because they change like the weather. If you say to me, "What will people think?" I don't care what they think. Because I don't rise and fall. Nothing changes what they think. Then I can't change what God will do. Nobody can stop God's plan for your life. Nobody can make it happen. They're going to talk bad about you anyway. If you look at our President Trump, every single day they speak badly about him. They beat him up every single day. He's not allowed even to eat fried chicken, and it goes in the news. Just constantly beating, and he's doing so much good for the nation. Is he perfect? I'm sure not. But so he's high profile. So don't get offended or feel bad if someone talks bad about you. They're going to talk bad about you. Someone's going to say what they shouldn't say. Just don't you do it. You don't do that, because you're a child of God. To train yourself not to talk about people. Don't be lured into a conversation. "Have you heard?" "No, I don't want to, thank you." "What do you think about that?" "No, I don't think. Not my business." That's what Jesus said to Peter. "What is it to you if I keep John till I come? You must follow me. Don't worry about John. Let's not be concerned about someone else." So here's our brother Paul, and what I really want to tell you is, I look at Paul's whole life and I wonder what the man is thinking. There were 243 men on that ship. And of all the people that the snake would attach itself to, had to be Paul. And I often have wondered in my life when I was younger, why me? Why is it always me? Why does this stuff always happen with my good fortune? This is going to, and we'd almost predict those things about ourselves and expect the worst to happen, because we feel sorry in our immature way. We think we always get the bad end of the deal. I used to complain to God that he wasn't fair. And then he taught me that God said he is not fair. God has never been fair, and he never will be fair. He's just. He's not fair. If he was fair, then we expect him to do what he did for that person, he's got to do for me. That's fair. God doesn't measure person to person, he measures to himself. It's holy. So he explained to me, he said, remember the parable of a man who worked all day, one who worked half day, one who worked only 1 hour, they got all the same wage? I said, yeah, and that's not fair. And the Lord said, how would you feel if you were the one working only 1 hour? Oh, I would shut up. That's what I would do. I wouldn't say a word. I would be totally happy and content. He said, well, you are that one because you redeemed. You washed in the blood. You got salvation you didn't deserve. You have nothing to complain about. So I've stopped complaining. We're talking about fear. I thank God for what I have. Do you hear what I'm saying? So I'm thinking this poor man, Paul, just escaped the storm, nasty storm. They wouldn't listen to him. And he said to them, men, you should have listened to me as you would have avoided the storm. Had you listened to me, he said so. I told you. And now he's, of all the people, he's the one that gets bitten by a snake. And I'm so glad it was him and nobody else, because he had faith. I know he had faith because when Luke writes, we get up all hope of being saved. Paul says, an angel appeared to me. I have to appear before Caesar. He had complete hope, and I said, I believe it'll happen to us as God said. He wasn't without hope or future. He had faith. So the snake could not hurt him. And that's what happens in our lives. You get a word. God said to him, you must appear before Caesar. So whether the storm was trying to get him, or the snake trying to get him, or any other situation, the same word wasn't working. So what has God spoken to you that you haven't seen happen yet? What is the promise of God for you that you know the Lord wants for you, but stuff keeps happening to you and you don't know how to deal with it? Don't you give up. You take that snake and you shake it off into the fire. Don't let that thing cause panic. Let me teach you as a father will teach the children. The plan and the tactic of the devil is to create panic and fear. I'm sure and confident that you can agree with me that the devil is not greater than Jesus. Do you agree with me? Do you believe that Jesus is stronger and greater than the devil? Now, the devil attacks us, and we give him a lot of credit for that. But I find that Jesus could do nothing in Nazareth because of their unbelief. So if their unbelief restricted Jesus' power, how can the devil attack me unless I'm believing for it? It's not called faith. It's called fear. That which a man fears will come on him. So the way we get faith is by hearing the word, and the way we get fear is by hearing the word. All you need to do is be told that you have cancer, or be told that you are bankrupt, or someone tell you things are bad. Then you panic, and out goes the faith. A man whose daughter had one child, his name was Jairus. He had one child. She was dying. He was so desperate. He had tried everything. And he had heard how that Jesus healed people. So he came to the water's edge where he heard the Lord was landing, and he's a very high-profile synagogue ruler, and he falls down on the floor, prostrate, so desperate for his one child. And he begs him to come to his house to heal his child. And he says, okay, I'll do it. And off he goes, and the whole crowd follows. But there was a woman in between that had also suffered a long time with bleeding, 12 years, in fact. And she stops the crowd because she touches his garment and she gets healed. And he starts having a whole interaction of dialogue, of preaching about this incident. Well, a word comes from the house. Messengers come. Jairus, Master, don't bother the rabbi anymore. Your child has passed. And the first immediate words out of Jesus is, don't fear. Well, why would he fear? She's dead already, because fear is the opposite to faith. Had they never come to tell him the child was dead, he would have gone all the way home believing and expecting a miracle. It's only because they said something. So when you are believing God or in a battle of faith, you've got to watch for the panic. Watch for the negative reports. 12 spies were sent into the promised land. They all saw exactly the same thing. 10 of them whined and complained and said, these men are giants. We look like grasshoppers in our own sight. And they had such a bad spirit, and the 2 had the right spirit, and God killed the 10 because they were so negative, even though they all saw the same thing. You have a different spirit. You don't have a spirit of fear, but of love and power and sound mind. You are the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. So when you face a crisis, you need to overcome it and go through it. Otherwise, you can't help anybody else if you don't know how that works. So when the snake is hanging off Paul's hand, he doesn't panic because he remembers that the angel said, you must appear. So no matter what the devil throws at Paul, he's going to Caesar because God said so. And whatever God said in your life, no matter what obstacle you've gone through and what mistakes you've made, because even your mistakes will not stop God's plan. Let me pause there for a moment. If I have not so many moments left, but I will try. Here's the thing. In Luke 22, Jesus said to Peter, the devil has asked to sift you, but I prayed for you that your faith would not fail. So Peter says, excuse me, Lord, I'm going to go to prison with you. In fact, I'm going to die with you if I have to. Actually, Peter, before the night's through, you will deny me 3 times. No way. Lots of way. I mean, how strange is that? The night's not even there through, and he's already denied the Lord 3 times. And Jesus says, and when you come back, I want you to encourage the brethren. He hasn't denied the Lord yet. He hasn't failed yet, and already he's restored. When you come back. And he's determined he's not going to do it. He was weak, and he failed 3 times. Well, why would you even allow that, Jesus? Why would you even tell him to stop him denying you? Well, there's some things in your life that is just part of the journey, part of your weakness, part of your struggles, and God's made room for you to get through it. In fact, Peter was needing that failure because he was so desperately trying to prove to Jesus that he had value. He was competitive with John, needing the affirmation. And when he made such a bad move and he failed the Lord, denied the Lord 3 times, he felt such a loser. And now he's going to stop striving and trying to prove who he is. Now he knows if he can do, only way he can ever succeed is by the grace and the goodness of God. It freed him from the constant striving. So sometimes you go through a crisis and God will use it to help develop you and make a better person of you. In fact, let me tell you that God is so capable. Romans 12 says that God makes all things work together for good according to the purpose for those that love God. Let me work that back for you. For those that love God, God has a purpose. And to that purpose, God's not going to allow, he's going to aggressively, forcefully, deliberately make things work together for good. So whatever divorce you've been through, whatever prison time you've done, whatever mistake you've made, whatever difficulty you're embarrassed and ashamed of, God's going to make good come from it. King David loved God, and God had a purpose for him. And he didn't, in a moment of weakness, he very deliberately, foolishly had an affair with another man's wife, and then he orchestrates the man's getting killed. Not a good thing. Yet God, in his greatness, because David loved God, because David had a purpose, he made good come from it, that the bloodline of that wrong relationship would bring Solomon and the very bloodline of Jesus. So whatever you've been through, stop your feeling sorry for yourself and whiny complaining. I don't do whiny complaining. If you tell me about your childhood and how sorrowful this was and that was, you must have me confused with someone who cares. Because if you are born again and have met Jesus, you cannot stay there anymore, whiny complaining. You're a new creation. He says, old things have passed. We don't talk about the past anymore. I don't care whether you killed somebody or whether you just lied. It's all sin and it's all past. I don't want to hear about your past. In fact, you don't glorify God by telling how bad you were before you got saved. Doesn't glorify God one lick. It's actually a painful thing for God to listen to. It caused his son to go to the cross. He takes that and he puts it under the blood. You nullify, you belittle the great price that Jesus paid, because he takes your sin and puts it in the sea of forgetfulness. And now what you're doing is, well, my testimony is I did this and this. It's almost like they're competing. No, you think you were bad. I was even worse. And they begin to recite. It does not glorify God a lick. Say that, like Paul, I was worst of all sinners and I've been redeemed. But to name your sin all the time that's been washed in the blood and forgiven with a most expensive price, let's rather treasure our new creation, our new life. What do you think of that? All right. I'm running out of time there.